The bulb above my table hums like a nervous animal, a shiver of light that makes giants out of the stains on the wall. Shadows bend and breathe until they almost look kind. The generator in the corner coughs, then clears its throat and pretends to be dependable. On the table, crumpled pages stuck together by damp and old blood, the ghost of equations, vectors, dosage curves, containment thresholds, scribbled in a hand that used to trust itself. I don't touch them. 5 years are written everywhere, on the ribs that press at my skin like tally marks, on the stippled map of scars that tells every place the world tried to replace me. The generator stutters again, and the radio's soft hiss turns for a heartbeat into words, not full ones, just frayed edges of them, but I already know the sentence they belong to. Licks, tower, potent, cure. The same broken shard I've heard at twilight every night this week. It lands in me and starts working under the skin, a splinter married to an idea. If it's a trap, it's a familiar kind, the kind I helped bait once. I pull the mask from its hook by the door. One lens is spiderwebbed, the other fogs if I breathe wrong. The straps bite. The seal is only a rumor. I slide the rusted knife into its sheath, feel the wobble in the grip, then pocket the half-empty canteen and the single vial that still pretends to be salvation. The label has bled to a smudge, but I know the recipe by heart, what it can do, and louder, what it cannot. It slows the bloom. It does not uproot it. The walls of the shelter are a patchwork of doors, road signs, fractured tile, and desperation. I've tarred and tied every seam, stuffed cloth into the places that still breathe, but the fog gets in the way. Time does, inevitably and only partly noticed. It's in the moths. It's in my lungs. It's in the damp that makes the mattress smell like a grave. I open the door to the outside, and the fog kisses my mask like an old friend who never forgave me. It's thicker today, riding low and heavy, turning the world into a single smear of graphite. The trees close by glow at the edges, slow pulses under the bark, as if remembering they were once rooted in something other than appetite. I step out and pull the door until the latch finds itself. The sound is almost domestic. Underfoot, the ground yields with a wet, tired sound. Vegetation and soil have agreed to a truce and become sludge. My boots argue with it and lose. I take the path that isn't a path so much as a muscle memory, skirt the fallen billboard whose smiling couple has been eaten to blankness, hug the ditch where the old drainage pipe makes the fog blow in sideways, avoid the weeping maple that shakes when you look at it. The first hour is small, my breath rasping through the mask, the drag of my left leg with a tendon healed short, the click of the knife's handle against my belt when I step high. The fog does what fog does, turns near and far into the same gray lie. I carry the tower in my head in case I lose it in my eyes, its silhouette rising from designs I signed with a pen that thought it was a miracle. A sound unspools ahead, just a peel of leaves at first, a hush that becomes intention. I stop with both feet under me and the knife already in my hand because there isn't time to decide to do it. A shape moves inside the thicker shape of the world, then it arrives in the open, and I have to correct the word arrive to assemble, tall in a way that belongs to scaffolds and cranes, not to torsos, skin that isn't, bark threaded through meat, laddered with vines that have learned how to flex like muscle. The face is not a face, only a smooth place where choices used to be. It moves without noise. I do not. The knife is a small, stupid argument, but it's the only one I'm fluent in. I go for the seam beneath the collar, if it has a collar, and the thing answers by drawing a single long arm back and laying it across my chest. The force isn't theatrical. It is simple and industrious. I hit the ground, and all the air leaves me in a single, honest sound. Heat blooms along my ribs, but beneath the heat is the old, thin itch, the one that means the world under your skin is being politely asked to make room. I fight the way the body does when the mind is late, kicking at the root tangle legs, sawing the knife into anything softer than wood. Tendrils wake from the creature's limbs and find my wrists, my thigh, the soft place where the sternum meets the neck. They do not squeeze, they enter. I scream, and the mask changes it into something private. My elbow finds a lever, and I shove until the knife sinks into a crease that gives like fruit. The creature jerks, a pulse that travels through its frame, and in the stagger, I roll and drive the blade upward and in again, a childish tantrum of intent. The grip loosens. I fall free into the stink of myself. The black has already started at the place under my rib where it managed to write its name. It crawls and pedals. I fumble for the vial with hands that would prefer to do anything else and get the cap with my teeth. The needle slides into my forearm and the cold runs along the veins. Relief is not the right word. It is a stay of execution with paperwork. The black slows. It does not reverse. I tear my shirt and bind the place where it burns, a bandage that will not survive argument, then stand before the body that is no one's body anymore. I wait for pity to arrive and leave again. It does both quickly. Distance becomes dishonest. Time becomes practical. The fog takes the sun away, and with it, the ability to imagine noon. I walk until my calves ask if I remember how to stop. Somewhere in the smear of afternoon, I find a settlement that lost the vote. 3 houses leaning together like old men, a fence that tried to remember the shape of a circle, a car sunk to the axles in earth that has learned to chew. The car is a museum case. Vines knit the chassis to the ground and thread the frame. The seat is held in place by patient green. The driver, what's left that points to driver, sits with eyes turned to nothing and jaw slack, the lips gone to lace. Roots have grown through his ribs and out the other side, sewing him to the wheel and the wheel to the column. It is hard to say exactly when the body stopped being a fact and became a display. I turn away before whatever happens next can think of me, but the fog carries sound like gossip. There is a low, torn noise from the car. Then the vines tense the way a hand does when it decides to make a fist. The body twitches, then wrenches as if taut, head jerking until the vacant eyes align. The roots tighten, and the mouth opens around a swallow that does not come. No, I tell the air, which has no opinion, and I run. Running is expensive. The ground bills you with interest. I run anyway until my lungs have to be held with both hands. Behind me, the scraping and the growl unspool into distance, and then into the fog's equalizing silence. I stop only when stopping happens by itself, folding into the crook of a tree whose bark ripples once under my shoulder and then remembers how to be still. The knife is still in my hand, welded there by sweat I can't afford. I make my breath long at the edges and narrow in the middle. I look at nothing. The quiet is good at first, then it isn't. It grows a seam. The undergrowth parts with care, and a man steps into view with both hands up, not high in surrender, just high enough to say maybe we both get to live. He is not bent the way the creatures are. He is bent the way hunger does, and fear. clothes that used to be a jacket and shirt, now a series of repairs. Face pale in the sick light, eyes bright and locked on mine. "Easy," he says, as if the word remembers how. "I'm not one of them." "That's not up to you," I say, the knife not quite lowering. His gaze flicks to the blade, then past me, scanning the fog as if he knows it can grow teeth. "Name's Tobin," he says, swallows. "I was with a group, but we scattered." His hands don't shake. That seems like effort. "You're heading to Helix Tower, right?" "How would you know?" It doesn't feel like a question. I heard it too. He gestures at the radio that no one can see. The signal. Figured anybody still moving in this direction either didn't hear it yet or decided to believe it. Belief isn't the word. I let the knife drop 2 inches. "We go together. If you try anything, I kill you." He nods as if I've offered him a job. "Understood." We move. The fog grades into evening without bothering with ceremony. Tobin walks like he's holding a full cup in his ribs. He keeps looking to the sides, the way people do before they say it out loud. I don't like being prey. "We should stop before it turns," he says after a while. "It's already turned." But he's right. There's a time of day when the fog thickens like blood on a cold plate. We're close to it. There's a place where a tree's roots have arched themselves into a cradle. We slide into it, careful of the moss, green as new promises and twice as lethal, spread in beautiful patches across the dirt. I point. "Don't touch that." He nods. "I've seen it." The way he says it tells me the story I don't ask for. Someone else did. We sit with our backs to wood that pulses if you pay it attention. I keep the knife loose in my hand because sleeping looks like dying and feels the same in the first second. Tobin waits long enough to pretend he didn't want to know. "Why the tower?" There are 2 answers. I give him the one that fits this size of night. Maybe a cure, maybe just a way to make it slower, maybe an end. "You think it's possible?" "I think it's necessary." I don't add that necessary. Things have been killing us in slow motion for years. He nods, eyes on the ground, as if he can read something in the dirt that doesn't want to be read. We trade silence. The roots above us creak their very old creak. The glow in the trees fades to the color of breath on glass. When the sound comes, it comes from inside, not out. A soft susurrus at first, then a pressure behind the eyes, then a voice that is not a voice because it has no throat. It has a network. It has patience. Join. Rest. Lay it down. The words arrive as feeling, too gentle, the way kindly hands can be stronger than rope. I lock my jaw and follow the only rope I trust, breath. In through what the mask allows, hold. Out slow until the edges of the world show up again. The thing in my head leans. I lean back. It whispers with a dictionary it took from us. It promises the end of endings. I let the promise walk past like a drunk at closing time. It tries again. It always tries again. My hands remember the shape of the knife's handle, and that helps. The pressure rides out, looking for a softer shore. When it's gone, it leaves a quiet that is not generous. I check Tobin with a glance. He's slumped against the root, eyes closed, mouth open, just enough to let out a thin whistle. Sleep or something like it. The currency that still buys minutes. I envy him for exactly 2 beats and then get back to work at staying. Night doesn't fall here so much as accumulate. The fog thickens into fabric. I take it in shifts. Count to 100 and look. Count to 100 and listen. Count to 100 and tell my heart that we are not prey, not in the next 10 seconds anyway. Somewhere very far away, something big moves through something breakable, and the sound arrives in damp tatters that never quite make a shape. At last, the light doesn't return so much as stop getting worse. The forest rises from the gray like a wreck, remembering its name. I put a hand on Tobin's shoulder and squeeze until he startles the way all of us do now. Hands up, breath hard, eyes searching the parts of the air that can conceal teeth. "It's time," I say. He nods, wincing as he sits. The fog is still thick enough to carry a man. The roots ease us out like a throat finishing a swallow. We gather our small inventory, a knife, a canteen, a vial that pretends to be good news, a mask that promises little and keeps that promise, and the names we've not yet given to the dead. We step back into the path that isn't a path. The forest watches the way it always does. Somewhere beyond the next bend, beyond the city that remembers us, the tower waits with the arrogance of a blueprint. I keep it in my mind the way a sailor keeps a star. We move. By the time the forest thins, the fog has learned our names. It parts for us the way an old curtain parts for light it doesn't respect. And there, beyond the last ribs of trees, the city rises like a carcass bleached by a slow tide. Towers list, windows cauterized into black. Bridges crumble with the weary elegance of old men kneeling. The air tastes metallic through the filter. Under the bandage at my ribs, the place where the creature wrote in me has cooled to a steady throb. The antidote's work moves like a shadow under the skin, there, but thinning. The spent ampule clicks against my thigh in the pocket with the knife oil, an empty promise I keep anyway. Tobin stops at the boundary where roots give up and concrete begins. His eyes skim the skyline as though it might answer for itself. "Worse than I figured," he says, which is the same as saying we keep going. We do. The ground is no longer ground. It's a compromise. Concrete veins bulging through loam, curbstones swallowed to their lips. The fog is heavier here, lower, as if the ruins sweat it. It slides around our ankles, unhurried, interested. We keep to the negative spaces, alleys fallen into each other, lobbies with ceilings that shed in scales, stairwells where the rails have softened into vines that are not entirely pretending. Once, a street yawns open in front of us, asphalt slumped into a bowl filled with rainwater so green it is already halfway to being a thought. We detour along the skin of buildings while a current ripples the surface from no visible source. The city speaks in little noises, drips that keep time until they don't, cables sighing in the wind like low strings, the far-off clatter of something remembering gravity. On a corner, a traffic light still works, cycling through colors without audience or intersection. Tobin laughs once, a dry bark that tries to be a cough. "They used to say the grid could outlive us," he murmurs. They were right. His breath fogs the mask. Mine does too. We pass the husk of a grocery, open freezers fat with pale growths that bloom like mouths, carts welded by rust into families. I point at the floor where the tile has gone dark with moss. He nods and places his feet where I place mine. That's the language now, the grammar of avoided steps. Twice we freeze as shapes move at the edge of possibility and resolve into nothing but fog practicing. In the belly of the city, a plaza reveals itself, a square whose corners have slumped toward each other over years of rain and neglect. At the center stands a dry fountain with figures softened until their poses read as yearning, only because everything here yearns for something it won't receive. Vines gird the basin, pale tissue veils the stone, trying new curves on old forms. The air is marginally clearer in the open, which means we can see farther, and that seems like a trap. At the far edge, half sunk into a kiosk, an old terminal blinks. The screen is spidered but stubborn. Beneath its cracks, a pulse. We approach in a slow V, me forward, Tobin covering the angles as if angles still exist. I wipe the film of algae and grime with the edge of my sleeve until the glow shows menus we taught the world to recognize. Security logs, personal files, emergency. The keys stick under my gloves like old scabs. I go where the living used to go first. The logs are mostly wreckage, time stamps that refuse to marry dates, camera feeds that have become abstract expressionism. Here and there, an intact second. A lobby floor crowded with people pressing toward doors that don't agree. A stairwell where someone drops suitcase and never thinks of it again. A barricade at an avenue's mouth. Soldiers treating their rifles like wands that will remember the spell if they insist. One feed stutters and freezes on the close-up of a soldier's face. The eyes are not dramatic. They are practical and afraid, which is worse. Behind him, out of focus, something enters the room like mold entering bread. I back out of panic into the quieter horror of personal files. It's a cemetery of names with their own weathers. Most have messages. Everything a last message always is. One entry shivers with a timestamp 3 days before the fall. Video. The insignia on the man's collar is a stain I recognize. Helix, nested in itself like a confident lie. He is unshaven, younger than his voice. Dr. Eric Holden, he says, and I don't know whether I knew him or just knew 100 like him, and now they're all this face. The convergence isn't a blind thing, he says. His voice keeps trying not to crack and failing with a scientist's patience. It pattern matches, anticipates. It uses our channels, transport, data, bodies. He swallows, looks off screen, looks back. You can feel it. That's the worst part. It's not possession. It's communion without an exit. That's the worst part. It's not possession. It's communion without an exit. The lights behind him flicker. Something presses at the glass of the small window in the door. If anyone hears this, don't try to sever it with force. The video hitches, audio tearing into metallic birds, and then the screen goes black. Tobin's hand finds the kiosk without looking. He doesn't ask, "Did you know him?" I don't say. I knew the version of him that signed off on the part we thought would hold. We stand in the plaza with the dead fountain and the unasked questions long enough to become part of its stillness. The city remembers us and sends a reminder. It comes as a tremor first, then a sound, then as bodies turning the fog into a tide. I smell them before I fully hear them. The sweet rot chemistry of cells cycling too fast and then failing. From the mouth of a boulevard, they pour into the open space. Dozens, maybe more, and all of them moving like the world under their feet has agreed to carry them. Flesh is a suggestion on them, not a rule. Veins show dark underskin that wants to be canvas. Limbs are bound in the same tissue that binds the buildings. Eyes are wells that drank their last light a long time ago. They do not look at each other. They do not look at anything. They move. I pull Tobin into the shadow of a collapsed wall, and we become equipment. The wind shifts, and I flatten farther, bringing him with me by the sleeve until his shoulder touches mine. The knife handle is slick. I will it not to be. The horde crosses the plaza like a memory you can't interrupt, each footfall indifferent, until all footfalls are one sound. A child-sized body shuffles by, growths like a shawl. The tallest passes a breath from our hollow. Tobin's inhale ticks loud in my mask and then disappears into the fog's book of small noises. One figure's head turns a fraction, not to us, but through us, a dog dreaming of a scent. We do not move, and therefore we do not happen. Long minutes grind themselves into thin sheets and fall away. When the last of them disappears into a street drowned in gauze, the plaza remembers empty again. We wait until waiting becomes an act of superstition, and then longer, because superstition has kept more people alive than hope. Only then do we unbend. High ground, I say into the little space between us. It isn't a strategy, it's a reflex. Tobin nods, the movement small and all he can afford. We peel ourselves from the wall and keep to the seams, climbing through the mouth of a building whose front half is chosen to rest in the street. Inside, desks make a hillside of particle board and dust. The elevators are open, black mouths full of webs. The stairs, what's left, lean in, and we lean back, making a truce out of posture. 3 floors up, the air tastes less like iron. 6 floors up, the fog thinks twice about us. 9 floors, and the city lays itself out like a wound finally admitting to its shape. From here, the avenue cuts are clearer, arteries silted with cars rusted into humps, side streets furred with new growth. The river, once a brag, moves sluggishly between banks that sag under a fur of pale organisms spreading in carpets. And there, east by south, exactly where the old maps promised, Helix Tower rises. It shouldn't be visible through this thickness, but its outline is not for the eyes so much as for the part of the brain that recognizes intention. The top is broken off like a tooth. The midsection is quilted in living matter that pulses slow. The base is hemmed in by the debris of buildings that tried to fall on it and were absorbed instead. I feel the old blueprint turn in my hands, the phantom weight of paper and pride. I trace a path without speaking, down this spine of street to the left, through that cut between 2 towers that lean into each other like conspirators, across the plaza with the bronze horse, now a scab of growth. The shortest way is suicide. The longer way is suicide with cardio. Somewhere between is what we can call a plan. Tobin leans on the sill, eyes narrowed the way people narrow them when they force their mind to do geometry instead of religion. That flyover, he says, pointing to the shattered arc of a pedestrian bridge that still hangs between 2 buildings like a thought someone didn't finish. If we can get into that tower, he gestures at the nearer of the 2, and cross there, we avoid the boulevard entirely. It might hold, I say. The bridge is more gap than span. Or it throws us a story high into a nest. We're out of good choices, he says without complaint, which is the same as agreeing we'll try. On the descent, the building grows temper. Steps that tolerated us on the way up crack a little when we return our weight. A door that had been a door decides to be part of the wall again. We climb through a window that remembers it used to open. In an office pinned between the floors, a calendar still shows a month that never finished. Someone's sweater has become the uniform for a chair that was drafted into the wall. We find a stair that still believes in itself and take it to the lobby, where the growth has crept in with the patience of rain. Back in the street, the fog seems closer for knowing where we want to go. We run the first block without planning to, then stop like we meant to all along, merging with an alcove where an ATM died mid-withdrawal, bills fused into a single dark tongue of pulp. Every movement earns a pause. We listen for the congregation of feet and for the quiet that often comes before it. The wound at my ribs hums hotter, a small engine. The antidote's thin comfort is thinning more. I press a palm there. The pain licks my hand and laughs softly. We reach the tower that anchors the bridge and slip into its service entrance, which has been scrubbed not by human hands, but by the friction of things passing. Inside, the first 4 floors are tugged toward the street by gravity, settled into angles made of resignation. We climb anyway. On 5, we find a stair that splits into 2. The left climbs to open air. The right descends into a darkness that whispers. We choose the left. On 7, a corridor has become a throat. We move along it as it pulses, saying nothing one to the other, because the words would show in the air like breath. The bridge is at 11, a broken tongue of metal and glass that has lost more than it kept. The gap in the middle is wide enough to be taken seriously. I don't look down because down is a theory I respect from a distance. The far anchor, 20 meters away, looks intact enough that hope tries out a shape in my chest and then apologizes for the presumption. "We can make it," Tobin says, voice calmer than his eyes. He tests the first plate with his weight. It bows and then decides to remember tensile to strength. He looks back. I nod because nodding is quicker than a speech. We step onto the span. It trembles like an animal that endured the winter and isn't convinced about spring. Halfway to the gap, a gust pushes the fog aside like a curtain and shows the avenue below, where shadows move with intent in a river of them we hadn't heard. The bridge quivers, an old nerve firing. We slow to a pace that feels like betrayal, but is mathematics. At the gap, 2 beams reach toward each other across the missing middle, short by the width of a person. Between them, bolted panels have fallen away in a pattern that suggests they were not welcomed. We stand, breathe, and do not examine our options for long. "I go first," I say. "If it takes me, you go back." "You can't get to Helix alone," he says, not to argue but to state a fact like rainfall. "Maybe not," I say, "but you can't get there if we both fall." He doesn't waste more talk on this. He crouches, plants 1 foot on the left beam, 1 on a narrower rib to the right, and settles his center like a man who had parents who told him about balance. I do the same. The distance is a step longer than a step, the kind of measure that humans are very good at missing by the thickness of a memory. I lean, grab the far beam, and let the scar tissue in my side light up the sky. My boot skids, metal squeals. I swing the other leg and find purchase with the ugly grace of something born in a narrower world. On the far beam, I haul myself forward, then flatten and breathe. Tobin follows with less noise, a quick metronome of risk. We lie there, 2 lengths of human against metal, while the bridge remembers how to be still. At the far door, the handle peels in my gloved fist like a fruit left too long in the sun, but the latch yields. We shoulder through into a new building's stale lungs. The air here carries the different scent of a different failure. Coolant and printer toner and coffee burned down to varnish. We close the door and the bridge with it, and for a moment the sound changes enough that we believe in walls. From a window facing east, the tower is closer now, its skin mapped in veins that carry a light too slow for electricity. A seam near the base gapes, where collapse has opened what used to be an entrance onto a corridor that now breathes. Between us and that wound, 6 blocks of street taught to move by living tides. We wait for the next flow, I say, then we piggyback on the quiet. Tobin nods, eyes not leaving the path we've taught ourselves to see. How's the wound? It knows I'm here. I tug the bandage tighter, a belt on a hunger. The dull ache answers with interest. I feel the space in my pocket where the ampulla is, and for a second, my fingers close on the empty cylinder as if it could refill itself on contact with hope. It rattles, useless and honest. We hunker in the office and become furniture again. Outside, the city runs its slow program. In time, the sound swells, the moan of many mouths and the shuffle of many feet, and then drains away along the boulevard like water finally finding the slope. We count 30. We count 30 again and hear only the individual drips, the single wires hum. When it's quiet enough to distrust, we move down the stairs, through a lobby where a security desk has bloomed a pale crust, into the street, where the fog lays one cool finger on my visor and slides away. We cut left along a loading bay, right between two delivery trucks whose sides have buckled around sprouting ribs of growth. A block, another, a half. The tower grows in the window of my mask with each breath. We don't look at it directly. Prayers deserve eye contact, and this is not a prayer. At the last corner, before the plaza broken by the bronze horse, we stop. Across the open square, the tower's base gapes like a wound that chose its size. The veins along its skin throb to some count we used to call pulse, but isn't. The fog is thinner here, as if the building inhales it. Tobin's fingers tap once on the knife handle at his belt. A nervous metronome he doesn't know I hear. I check the plaza, then check it again. The statues are hunched now in different attitudes, adorned by new growths. The horse is a lumpy silhouette, head bowed not in nobility, but in weight. No shadows move, no chorus gathers. We go on the next breath, I say. The tower's skin dimly brightens, then dims, a rhythm learned in every lab in the world. We step out together and cross the dead square that still knows how to echo. The tower's shadow reaches to meet us, long and cool and full of its own weather. At its foot, the broken entrance waits with a patience that feels like cruelty. I put my hand to the edge where concrete becomes tissue and feel heat, the low animal heat of something industriously alive. We look once at each other, the only kind of inventory that counts, and then we pass inside. Inside, the tower has forgotten which part of itself was once a building. The corridor inhales, walls ribbed with cable and cartilage, and the air presses through my filter, warm and patient, like something taking my measure. The floor gives a little with each step, a membrane stretched over old concrete. My boots come up wet and tack with threads that don't want to let go. Veins run along the ceiling, pulsing to a rhythm too slow for electricity and too intent for plumbing. The whisper I fought in the forest becomes a pressure at the back of my eyes, a gentle hand on the hinge of thought. Tobin walks at my shoulder, bent a fraction to protect his side. When the light from the living veins swells, his face goes the color of candle wax. The knife in his fist isn't a weapon so much as a habit. Stay behind the seams, I say, and he does, keeping to the places where steel shows through the slick, where bolts still remember their work. We pass the ghosts of rooms, a lobby that has grown soft ribs across its ceiling, a security checkpoint draped in a white film that eats the metal slowly enough to look like kindness. A sign, "Welcome to Helix Tower," bulges under a clear skin that has learned how to read the letters and is practicing their shapes. Every turn is the same and not the same. I could walk this with my eyes shut. I built this place at a desk, but the tower wants to be a maze now. A shape steps into the corridor ahead with the confidence of a door that knows it's locked. It is taller than the hall deserves and wider by half. A scaffold wrapped in tendon, a torso hung with tool limbs that have been taught new verbs. Where a face might go, a plate studded in dead lenses. It moves a hand that used to be a grabber for ducks. And the wall shivers, spiderweb cracks racing through the gelatinous lining. I don't think. The knife is already in my palm. Tobin slides right and low, panting through his teeth. The hybrid charges, its steps loud as machinery, and the corridor narrows around the intention. I dive left and feel a steel rib jab my thigh. Tobin darts in and slashes at a seam where wet meets weld. The thing screams like modem noise, a digital pain broadcast through a throat that never needed to learn how to sing. It backhands Tobin without even the respect of aiming. He strikes the wall, and the wall flexes and then doesn't catch him. I hear the sound of bone thinking about changing shape. The hybrid's other arm clamps for my neck. I drop under it and drive the knife up into the gap between two plates, feel the soft give of something that wanted to be a bladder and got promoted. Hot fluid spills, acid, sour, and sweet at once, slicking the hilt. The grip closes on my mask instead, fingers carving grooves into the cracked lens. Pressure pins my head against the wall, the world narrowing to the fog in my own breath and the whisper in my skull that says, not surrender, not quite, but relief. My left hand is free. I find the second knife I pretended I didn't need and push it through the largest dead lens, through the socket behind it, aiming for the place where we kept circuits once. The blade hit something hard, then something soft, then a tunnel of resistance that yields with a ripple. The hybrid convulses. A shower of sparks falls like a cheap holiday. It stumbles back enough to let air back in. Tobin, staggered and gray, grabs the hilt and twists. The machine meat shrieks in a pitch that hurt when we were still human enough to use words like hurt. Then it collapses, limbs tangling, lights dying, into a heap that continues to leak long after it has stopped meaning to. We lean on opposite walls and learn our lungs again. You good? I ask. The answer doesn't matter. It matters that he tells me. Enough. He touches his side. His mouth tightens around something he doesn't let out. There's blood at his waist, dark and deliberate, soaking the shirt in a pattern that looks like writing. He keeps moving. So do I. Deeper. The tower tips from remembering to owning. The concrete bones thin out, sheathed in a thickness that wavers if you stare too long. Under my palm, a panel thrums to a signature I recognize, not as a hum of heat sinks and fans, but as something that learned to translate those sounds into language. It speaks in my head in the voice of old colleagues and dead equipment. This way. I hate how easy it is to follow. We take a ramp that used to be a corridor. Air vents are mouth-like and wet, exhaling a warmth with the perfume of ferment and copper. The pressure behind my eyes becomes a cord. It plucks at old threads. The first day the tower went live. The clap on my back from a man with a badge and a checkbook. The fluorescent miracle when the first culture took. Cells dividing with choreography we wrote for them. A child's laugh I haven't earned hearing again. My hands shake and I tell them to stop. They stop because I am not done with them yet. At last, a door that has not yet been eaten by anything but time. Reinforced, pitted, hinges swollen under new tissue. I lay my ear to it and feel the lowest note I've ever felt, as if the earth was humming and this was the place it chose to speak. Here, I say. It doesn't need saying. Tobin's eyes have gone glassy with pain and focus together. He nods once. The handle is embalmed in a translucent rind. I carve it free, and the rind bleeds a thin, clear juice that smells like a promise. The latch sticks, then coughs, then yields. The door opens on a room built to contain the hub we made, a cathedral built by something that wants to live in everything. The ceiling recedes into coils and loops of vascular light. Walls are layered in filaments, each strand feeding, fed, braided into ropes that dive into the center mass. The core itself is a swollen heart crossed with a mainframe, throbbing in time with a city's worth of stolen pulses. Its surface crawls with symmetries that almost make sense until they change. It is beautiful in the way an oil slick is beautiful, a scent of color, a sheen that hides a throat. The whisper becomes a choir. It is no longer only join. It is rest, be done. Let us carry you not as blue persuasion, but as the catalog of everything I have not put down for 5 years. It knows the ache in my ribs. It knows the cracked glass I breathe through. It offers to take the ledger out of my hands. Storage, I say aloud, because primitive rituals work. Saying a thing can sometimes keep you from becoming it. We fan out along the perimeter, where the old wall still shows. Terminals lie under a crust of translucent growth like ice over a pond. Under my gloves, a console wakes when I touch it, the screen hissing through half-one pixels into a menu I built with people who wore ties to work and thought failure meant an extension, not an ending. The growth shivers around my fingers as if asking for a turn. My hands remember the map. Behind this panel, a lockbox. Behind the lockbox, a well. The word countermeasure sleeps in my head with a letter after it, the kind you only get to when you're running out of alphabet. The console coughs up a schematic, rooms reduced to organs, arteries for hallways, and there it is, pulsing slow. Countermeasure, prototype, Z. A compartment icon glows feebly in the far corner. Tobin, I call. Storage there. He is already moving, each step an argument he is winning by smaller margins. He shoulders a curtain of living filaments that cling and then recoil from the taste of his blood. The compartment itself is half swallowed in amber. He scrapes at it with his knife, and the rind yields with the sad elasticity of old gum. The door pops with a faint, bureaucratic sigh. Inside, foam. In foam, a vial, no label left. Just a calm internal light, a faint luminescence like a nerve exposed to night. I hold it and feel nothing special and everything at once, the weight equal to everything I failed. The whisper in my head tilts. It becomes coaxing. It offers a detour. Put that down. Come closer. Lay your head here. Where? Tobin asks, voice gone to gravel. It is a genuine question stripped of hope or fear. He will go where I point. There are not many kinds of mercy left. That is one. I follow the old lines. The injection ports used to be proud in their housings. Now they crouch behind a fringe of tendrils like mouths at the bottom of a tide pool. One port is still square enough to be itself. The slot accepts the vial with a contemptuous little click, the way a throat accepts communion. The screen beneath it shudders, finds its letters, lists a sequence whose steps are missing, hangs at authority, and then turns to me like an animal deciding whether to bite. The convergence feels the intent. The room's light swells and narrows, filaments tighten, the pressure in my head sharpens into a point so fine it could write on bone. No, it says, sweet and certain, you don't have to hurt anymore. I laugh once. It sounds like choking. Override, I say to the console, hands already on keys remembered by joints, not by thought. Codes I haven't used in years come back like old sins. A supervisor's name, changed twice and then not again. A passphrase I made as a joke about how nothing ever ends. Panels open and close. The system spits error like seeds. I rewrite a path around a block that isn't mine and was never meant for me. Behind me, Tobin cuts at the nearest reaching strand, and the strand retreats, not from pain, but from confusion. Progress crawls. A bar wakes at the bottom of the screen, pale and reluctant. It advances a finger's width and stops to think. The convergence thinks too, faster. Cables tense like muscle and strike at the console. Tobin steps into their path, blade a metronome, teeth bared in the old way of boys who learned to fight with sticks and never got to trade up. A tendril wraps his shin and burns through cloth. He yelps and hacks it away, the air filling with a smell like wet hair on a toaster. The bar inches. 10%, 15%. The room tilts as if the tower is drawing a breath down to the foundations. The choir swells. It threads other voices through the chant. My mother humming while she cooked. The laugh I promised I'd teach my child. The apology I never delivered. It plays memories like film through a light leak. I put my forehead briefly to the console's edge to remember which one of us is warm because it is alive and which is warm because it is busy dying. 25. The floor ripples. A vein overhead ruptures into a slow rain of clear fluid. Tendrils convulse and clamp and withdraw, learning us. Tobin moves slower now, using the wall to stay vertical. The dark at his waist spreads with each breath. He doesn't look down. We meet eyes once. There is too much there to name and no time to try. 40. The convergence decides on a different tactic and arrives inside my head with a picture I didn't know I could still see. Morning, glass, a kitchen table under sun, a tiny hand sticky with jam, a woman pretending not to cry because it is my first day at the tower and we thought life could be two things at once. Come back, it says, with her voice. It's easier here. You will be everything. I put my fist to my sternum and push until breath comes out, mean and ugly. Not like this, I say to an empty room that is anything but. My thumb stabs the last authorization harder than I need to, a petty violence I can still afford. 60. The core's surface sprouts eyes that are not eyes. Apertures blooming and irising down, watching with blank appetite. A cluster of tendrils whips the console, sparks jump and die. I shove Tobin back with an elbow as another lash comes down. It clips his shoulder instead of his neck. He stumbles, catches himself on the edge of the compartment, grins at me through his pain with an expression so boyish and furious with life that I want to tell him to stop. He doesn't. 80. The room's frequency shifts. I feel it in my teeth. The bar pauses as if listening. I hear the tower above us, remembering that it is heavy. Panels in the ceiling crack, revealing a darkness that moves. The whisper in my head drops to a tone so low it rearranges my heart's idea of rhythm. Please, it says, and this is the worst of it, because I made a thing that can ask. 98. The last sliver crawls to the end with the determination of a wounded animal. The console wavers, glitches, offers me the old lie of abort. As if I could, even if I wanted to. I hammer the answer it deserves, and the port opens to swallow the vial whole. The core reacts like a struck bell. Light gallops along the veins, brightening in waves, then dims, then brightens again with a pulse that is less confident and more angry. The choir fractures into harmony and howl. The bar flips to a new screen I didn't design, something the living lattice wrote for itself. Scrolling characters I can't read and recognize anyway, a death sentence in its native script. Then the room hits us with force. Tendrils whip not to probe, but to break. One catches Tobin square in the ribs. He leaves the floor and meets the wall with a sound I refuse to name. He slides down in a smear that belongs to both of them. His knife clatters away, and the tower taste tests the metal like a tongue. He looks at me, and the pain in him is both unbearable and uninteresting to the part of him that has decided what to do with the last of his time. "Go," he says, which is ridiculous. We both see the exit. It is 12 meters of open before the doorway, and the doorway is a throat that will close if we try. "Hold him," I say, which is ridiculous in a better way. He nods once, not pride, agreement. He forces himself to his feet, and God help me, charges into the reaching mass with a shout that is almost laughter. He cuts, not well, but with intention. The tendrils detour to deal with him because living systems are drawn to heat, and he is heat, wearing a man's shape. A path opens that isn't a path so much as an idea. I run it, not to flee, there's no fleeing, but to finish standing. The core, sensing the shape of what we have done to it, turns itself inside out. The light along the walls stutters. The filaments pulse and then go slack in fluttering waves like fields in wind. The console showers its last sparks and dies with a childish little whine. The whisper in my head rises in pitch until it becomes a scream, and then continues rising until it becomes something I can't hear, and blessedly for a breath, I hear nothing at all. When the sound returns, it is stone and weight. The ceiling drops a meter in a single convulsion. Dust becomes a substance. Chunks of old world rip through new. The core convulses, surface blistering, tendrils lashing in drunk fury. In the corner of my eye, Tobin is on his knees and still swinging, each arc of his arm smaller than the last. He is buying seconds at a price I cannot afford to think about. There is still a knife in my hand, and there is still a heart in the room. I move because meaning lies in verbs. I climb the last meters over a floor that has learned to roll, up a ridge of cables gone soft until the core's skin is within reach. It is warm and slick and too alive. I put my palm to it, and it presses back with an intimacy I have not been offered in years. We can be one, it says, with 1,000 mouths, and the one that matters. I know, I say, and drive the knife into the center of its wanting. Everything stops, not like a cut, more like a held breath. Then the world exhales, and the core's surface caves around the blade. The light collapses inward in a throat of brightness. The tendrils fall at once, 1,000 ropes released. The choir cuts mid-syllable. In the sudden vacuum of sound, the tower structure can finally be heard die in. The floor shifts into a slope, and the slope becomes a decision. The ceiling lands in pieces. The door we came through remembers it was supposed to close and tries, but there are too many bodies in the way, dead, dying, human, not. A slab catches my shoulder, and I spin, hit, bounce, see a sky of dust and filament and stone, and a single tilting view. Tobin, curled like a boy who understands too late that the game was not a game. I open my mouth to say his name and swallow grit. The world goes to granular gray. Under the dark, a light. It is not in the room. It is not on the screens. It is not in the veins. It is under my ribs, flaring with a softness that feels obscene here. A kitchen morning, the arc of a spoon, a small hand patting at my shirt. The sun through real glass making a rectangle on a floor that never grew a skin. I do not believe in visions. I believe in the brain's kindness. It gives me this and I take it, and for a moment I can't remember what we were trying to fix because nothing in the picture needs fixing. The picture fades as easily as breath on a mirror. The dark climbs back in. The tower continues to come down. Somewhere in its guts, systems we braided into the living grid do what systems do when given a single clear instruction. They follow it. The countermeasure runs the veins as far as the veins will carry it, an old idea wearing a new coat. The convergence doesn't die, not completely. It limps. It loses its choir and keeps a hum. Across the city, the glow in the trees dims a fraction, then a fraction more. In the dead plaza, a statue's veil of tissue loosens to slime. In the forest, a patch of moss lifts its razors and lays them down for half a heartbeat before remembering itself. None of this is healing. All of it is interruption. Sometimes interruption is the only surgery you can afford. The ground under my cheek vibrates with a pulse that is not the cores anymore. It is the broadcast network waking because the flood we sent knocked out the clamps the convergence threw onto its throat. Old circuits, stubborn as weeds, clear their throats. Somewhere, a generator stutters and decides to believe. A frequency opens with a rusted squeal and then steadies. Static at first, then a voice with no personality, the one the city used when it wanted every ear at once. Update, it says, broken, learning again. Containment vector, slowed, repeat, slowed, not stopped. Helix tower compromised, countermeasure, Z deployed, hold. I smile against grit. It hurts. It's good. Out there, someone standing under a too bright tree or inside a too quiet room will hear that and put down the razor, the rope, the plan to run into the fog and be done. They will wait an hour. Maybe they will wait a day. Maybe that day will buy us a month. Maybe a month is enough for someone braver and less guilty than me to find a better word than slowed. Around me, the tower settles into its final shape, a ruin becoming just a ruin. Dust makes a low weather. My mask has cracked enough that the fog finds my mouth and kisses me like a widow. My hands have forgotten to hurt. My chest lifts once, twice, measuring what's left, and decides. The last thing I feel isn't pain. It is the weight leaving. The ledger finally set on the table and pushed away. The last thing I hear isn't collapse. It is the flat civic voice repeating the weird small hope we made out of what we broke. Slowed, not stopped. The last thing I see is not the tower, not the core, not the room we made into a mouth. It is light, plain, warm, unimpressive, falling across a floor that will never learn to breathe. After that, the book closes and the world keeps going. The fog holds, the trees watch, the countermeasure runs, stubborn as a thought, and the convergence, surprised to discover it can feel surprise, learns the shape of waiting. Somewhere, a radio keeps repeating the only sentence we earned. And somewhere, farther than that, someone listens and decides just for today to stay.